High-level negotiations on Iran's nuclear program are underway in Geneva. This time, the talks include top nuclear officials from both sides, and every issue is on the table. Newly minted American Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter gathered security chiefs in Kuwait for a briefing on U.S. strategy against jihadism, vowing lasting defeat against the Islamic State group. Israel's electricity company cuts off electricity to 2 towns in the West Bank for 45 minutes. The company announces that if a resolution won't be found to a $500 million debt held by the Palestinian Authority, further measures will be enforced.
The news today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. Geneva today is the setting for high-level talks on Iran's nuclear program ahead of a March deadline that both sides have said they don't want to extend. This round marks the first time negotiations include top nuclear officials. On the Iranian side, that includes Ali Akbar Salahi, director of the country's Atomic Energy Agency. He served in the previous hardline government and is thought to be pushing against strong limits on the nuclear program. John Kerry, for his part, called the talks today useful, constructive, and serious, with the sides outlining the elements of a deal as we speak. What would it look like? We will go tonight to our correspondents in Geneva and analysts in the studio, but first, let's take a look back.
דוח הסוכנות הבינלאומית לאנרגיה אטומית קבע שאיראן ממשיכה להסתיר את המרכיבים הצבאיים של תוכנית הגרעין שלה. נמשכות איתה שיחות הגרעין כרגיל.
و امروز کسی در جهان نمیتواند ادعا کند که برنامه هسته‌ای ایران ماهیت غیر صلح‌آمیز داشته است.
E3+3 under Iran will be reached and subsequently announce a comprehensive agreement as scheduled.
Closer than ever. With me is Dr. Emily Landau, head of the Arms Control and Regional Security Program at the INSS. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Good evening. Hi.
And also Eran Zinger, Middle East editor of Israel Public Radio. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you very much for coming. Is it closer than ever?
Well, according to some of the reports, it might seem that way. The fact that it's a high-level summit is not necessarily an indication that they're closer than they were before. But I think just a couple of hours ago, there was an AP report that seemed to be giving already some of the parameters of the deal, although I haven't seen anything that includes more than the fact that perhaps they're agreeing on the 6,500 centrifuges. We know nothing about the verification mechanism that they've decided upon, what's happening to Iran's stockpiles of low-enriched uranium, which is a big issue. So as it has been over the past 12 months, always discussion focuses on the number of centrifuges at the end of the day, and of course the sunset clause, which is how long this deal will be in effect. And I think the article mentioned the fact that it will be maybe around the order of 15 years, but the restrictions will only be for 10 years. And if Iran behaves in those 10 years, then the last 5 years will actually be years in which they start loosening the restrictions, and Iran will be able to build up its nuclear infrastructure. But there are serious, serious questions that it's not clear yet what will be included in the deal. And of course, the very fact of 6,500 centrifuges should not give us, cause for being calm about the situation, because this already is an indication of of how much the P5+1 have backed away from previous demands.
Not only that it backed away, like you're saying, it seems that this triangle only includes Iran, the United States, and Israel.
I don't think that it's only the concern of Israel. What we're seeing right now, I think we could have followed some very interesting remarks coming from the Arab world in the last few days concerning the concerns of the Arab nations, especially the Saudis, the Egyptians, and other Gulf states. Secretary of Defense, the American Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, was in Kuwait today to discuss ISIS. This was the official target of the visit. But one should know, or one should emphasize, that the Americans are now doing the best they can in order to persuade, in order to convince the Arab nations, the Arab Sunni nations, that they're not going to have an agreement with the Iranians without the Arab countries knowing about it. This is the main issue here.
It's not and approving, or only knowing about it?
I don't believe that the United States will do something without letting the other side, or letting Israel and the Saudis and Kuwait and the Emirates knowing about it. I think that they need their approval, yes.
So before...
It's not even clear that they're looking for the approval of Congress, so I wouldn't be too optimistic about getting the approval of Israel and the Arab states.
Yeah, but although it seems that Israel and the Arab states are much closer on the same idea than the United States and the Arab states, or the United States, of course, and Israel. But before we will continue, more from the diplomatic correspondent for the News Today, Eli Ochenberg.
It's a crucial stage for the Iranian nuclear talks. After long months of negotiations, 2 missed deadlines, and an endless amount of press conferences around the globe, it's now time for world powers in Tehran to make significant progress towards an agreement. Otherwise, the U.S. has threatened another extension is unlikely to be given.
I want to say that lots of difficulties, especially given the nature of negotiations, complicated as such. It's just very normal for negotiations. Nothing is agreed until everything agreed. Any specific result on particular issues will be subject to an overall final agreement.
For the third day in a row, representatives of 6 world powers and Iran are aiming to finalize the outline of an agreement. According to officials, the current idea is to reward Tehran for good behavior over the last years of the agreement's duration by gradually lifting limitations on its uranium enrichment program that will be imposed at the initial part of a deal. Another important aspect of any agreement will be, of course, a gradual easing of sanctions on the Islamic Republic. And while the sand in the West's hourglass continues to trickle, Russia has offered Iran its latest anti-2500 missiles after a deal to supply less powerful S-300 missiles was dropped under Western pressure.
So, Emily, explain to me and to our viewers that here you are. Explain to me and to our viewers who don't understand right now about this current, let's say, deal. What is the deal exactly about, and what is the deal that they can reach?
Well, the deal is supposed to be a comprehensive nuclear deal that is supposed to cover all of the troubling aspects of Iran's nuclear program in order to ensure that Iran cannot move to a nuclear weapons capability. That's what it's supposed to be about. Okay. But just referring back to the clip that we saw at the beginning of the show, there were 2 elements there. There was Netanyahu talking about the weaponization aspects and the investigation of the IAEA. And we also saw a parade with Iran's long-range ballistic missiles. These are 2 issues which don't seem to be part of the discussions right now. There's a very, if people watching and following this are confused, I'm watching this very closely, writing about it all the time, and I'm also confused. I'm confused why the weaponization aspects, why the IAEA investigation is not part and parcel of the political negotiation that's going on, and it seems not to be. We just got a report from the IAEA that Iran is not cooperating with their questions, with their investigation. This should be a huge red flag that we cannot move to an agreement right now, and yet all of the talk about the fact that they're getting closer to a deal. The ballistic missiles as well have not been part of this negotiation. This is very puzzling because you can't have a nuclear weapons capability without the delivery mechanism. Iran's ballistic missile program is continuing on unhindered because Iran claims that ballistic missiles are non-nuclear and therefore they are outside and they were not in the interim deal. These are big problems.
And if I may add, it's not only the missiles, it's where you put these missiles. And this is a very major issue right now because the Iranians, without any nuclear capability, are sending their arms everywhere in the Middle East, in the vacuum that we're now witnessing in the Middle East after the collapse of the Arab nation or the Arab state. What we're seeing right now is the immense impact of Iran in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and also partly in North Africa. This is these are the cards that the Iranians are using on the negotiation table. They are saying to the West, okay, we're holding the key to put an end to the crisis in the Middle East right now, so you should pay. And the payment is by going forward in the negotiating table in Geneva.
You know what is... I want to continue with this point, but with us right now, yes, he is with us, is Dr. Ali Nourizadeh, Director Center of the Iranian and Arab Studies. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello.
So, Dr. Zadeh, let's try to understand, because what we're hearing here, the problem is not only with the nuclear program. The problem is with Iran becoming an armed country with ballistic missiles, with a nuclear program, and being basically not only an enemy to the United States or to Israel, but to the entire world and to the entire region. So how come the world is only focusing on the nuclear program and not something else?
Well, as a matter of fact, the weakness of President Obama towards Iranian leader Ayatollah Khamenei it's quite clear and obvious. And I don't see in the American history that dealing with a country, with a rough country, that the American makes such a concession and to be ready to accept all sorts of demand from the other side. Just consider it, that instead of Iran, if, for instance, Saudi Arabia or any other country was behind killing American soldiers in Beirut and American Marines in Lebanon, and then kidnapping American citizen and capturing the American embassy and hijacking the American embassy and killing and destroying and death to America for 36 years. Would America be such a easy partner to be so lenient and sit and talk to them and try to compromise, try to make them happy and satisfied and go out with face-saving formula? I doubt it. I think there is something wrong with the American policy.
Something wrong, or there are some. That's an understatement, like everybody's saying here in the studio. But is it only something wrong, or some let's say range of interests that we don't understand or we're refusing to see?
Yeah, I'll give you one example. For instance, the Iranian involvement in Yemen changed the whole country. Look at Yemen. It's, you know, we see the beginning of cracking down the state of Yemen, and the Iranians are supporting Ansarullah or the Houthis, while other countries in the region, they are supporting the legitimate government, elected government of Yemen. So the American, instead of standing to the Iranian and tell them, get out, the Americans are happy because the American administration wrongly believed that Houthis are going to fight with Al-Qaeda. Okay, let them fight with Al-Qaeda, and when they finish Al-Qaeda, then we can come and talk to the Iranian and find a formula, a compromise. That's wrong. The American, whenever they make concession, as they did it in Iraq, Dr. Ayad Allawi won the election, but the American, they went with the Iranian ideas to bring Maliki, and Maliki in 8 years destroyed Iraq's unity, destroyed Iraq's future and hopes for democracy. That's what the American did. Unfortunately, President Obama's policy towards Iran is totally wrong. All the Iranian opposition group, the Iranian reformists, everybody inside Iran, they are astonished. They can't believe American president sending letter to Khamenei when Khamenei's soldier was killing the Iranian in 2009 in the street. And President Obama was begging Ayatollah Khamenei to come and said, we can be friends and we recognize Iran as a superpower of the region.
You know, Dr. Zadeh, I want to try to, let me be a little bit naive. Maybe he's saying, if you can beat them, join them or try to make peace with them.
But join them. What do you mean? I mean, we have an ideological government in Iran which wants to conquer all Middle East. They are supporting militant Shiite forces in Bahrain, in other countries. And should we sit and wait until Mr. Khamenei announced that he's, the grand leader of the Muslim world? No, I don't think that would be advisable, or that would be visible. The Iranian would not. When I'm talking about Iranian, I'm not talking about my people. Of course. I'm talking about a small group who are ruling Iran with guns, ruling Iran with even prison, with torture, with capturing, kidnapping, execution, and all of that. So these people should stand in front of them and tell them no. Unfortunately, President Obama is ready to shake hands with them as long as he's sure that the Iranians are not pursuing their nuclear military program.
So
who knows?
Dr.
Maybe they do it underground. I mean, I know a lot of information about underground, facilities and establishment. They've already digged in and all over the country. And who knows? I mean, is Mr. Obama is going to find out about them 10 years later, I mean, when he's retired or when he's somewhere else? This is it. I think they have to change their stand.
Yeah, I want you to stay with us for this conversation, and I want you to listen also to participate in our conversation here in the studio, because what you are saying are really important things. Emily, these are the things that maybe most of the Iranians are seeing, and but the regime that just doesn't care. The regime has something else on its mind, and the regime wants to conquer maybe and be the one and only ruler of the Muslim world.
I mean, the regime is very happy with the situation that Dr. Zadeh is explaining so well, because it looks like the Obama administration is somehow buying into the view of the Middle East that they are trying to push forward. And it's just as was said here before. They're putting it on the table as some kind of card in the nuclear negotiation. From their point of view, very smart. The problem is that the Obama administration is buying that, even though if he would listen to Khamenei's rhetoric, he would hear the supreme leader voicing hatred of the United States, contempt of the United States, disdain of the United States. Is this the regime that he thinks he can cooperate with in, as you said before, maybe they want to create some kind of peaceful... This isn't moving towards that. This is moving towards the regime getting the United States to acquiesce in their regional hegemonic agenda, which will come at the expense not only of every state in the Middle East practically, but it's going to be a global security issue. It will come back to Europe. It will come back to the United States.
Like ISIS is coming back to Europe, and like Al-Qaeda is coming back to Europe.
It's naive to think that this is, it will be contained.
I totally agree with Emily and with Dr. Ali Nourizadeh, but there is a very sensitive issue here regarding the critic or regarding the what Israel and other nations, not only in this region but around the world, have to say about the U.S. foreign policy, not starting now when it comes to the Iranian deal, going backwards to the Arab Spring. We saw what the Americans did to the Egyptian administration of Hosni Mubarak. So this is the same problem. And the difficult thing here right now is to be brave enough and to stand to stand in front of the Americans or the American administration and to say, as Israelis or as Israel, the closest or the closest friend of the United States in the region, to say, Mr. Obama, you're wrong. And the only one who is brave enough to say so in Israel right now is Benjamin Netanyahu. But one should understand that the price that he is going to pay, and I think Netanyahu is also aware of the price that he is going to pay for doing so, for going to the States, for going to the Congress and saying what everybody else is not saying to Obama.
Not only everybody else is not saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Zadeh, it seems that, just 2 years ago, we sat down here. We were talking about Rouhani. We were saying about maybe the world is really buying this charm attack, that the smiles, let's say the language that the West knows. And at the end of the day, it seems, that everyone are that blind. I really don't want to believe that the United States will go to any deal just because of ego, just because of not saying, okay, maybe we are wrong. Maybe we didn't understand the culture. We're not understanding the culture of the Middle East, that's for sure. We don't understand the language. And of course, we don't understand the language that Ayatollah Khamenei is speaking with us.
You see, my dear, what's happening is, unfortunately, the American, one way or the other, they bought the idea of Islamic democracy in Iran. They believe that there is kind of democracy. Okay, we have ex-president, we don't have in any other country. We have ex-president Rafsanjani, Khatami, but they don't look at this issue that printing picture of Khatami or his name is getting your newspaper closed, and you may face prosecution. And this is President Khatami, elected by 28 million Iranian. The American, they don't understand the politics in Iran, unfortunately. Since the revolution, they made mistake after mistake. The question is, yes, Mr. Rouhani has got good intention. As Mr. Khatami and Rafsanjani, all of them, they have good intention. But in this government, the one who makes decision is a man called Ali Khamenei. And Ali Khamenei playing games with everybody. Now, when he left that Ahmadinejad is useless, he brought misery for him. So he allowed Rouhani to be elected. Rouhani suddenly appeared, as a nice, beautiful peacock. He came and everybody clapped for him. Okay, what Rouhani can deliver, while there is a veto always by Khamenei, the American, they don't understand. And when they wanted to correct their mistake, they said, okay, we're going to talk to Ayatollah Khamenei. We're going to send him letters. But talking to Ayatollah Khamenei also is not going to solve the problem. As long as the Iranian seeing that the Americans are so weak, they are make concession after concession. Even they remove their forces from Iraq and leave Iraq in the hand of Maliki and Qasem Soleimani, the commander of Quds forces, without supporting their own allies, Dr. Alawi, the Sunnis, the good Shia, the moderate Shia. They leave Iraq to Maliki and Soleimani and the Iranian. The same thing happening in Yemen. That's a wrong policy. I believe Iran has got all the right to have, nuclear plants and to use nuclear power in a peaceful manner. But,
Yes.
but I don't trust this regime. I believe there is a secret program. We don't hear about it because they tighten their security. The people are selected carefully. So getting the news out is very difficult, but I have no doubt, because I heard Mr. Khamenei's speech to very close circle of scientists that look at North Korea, a hungry country, a weak country, but because they have a nuclear bomb, American can do nothing.
So what you're saying, Dr. Zadeh, is that the Americans are blind, Emily. The Americans are blind, and they're not seeing, and they're for me, it seems like we want to reach a deal because we need to leave a legacy. We need to leave something in the foreign policy that we weren't able to achieve in any other part of the world because we missed, like Iran is saying, the Arab Spring.
I think, unfortunately, that's a big part of the problematic situation that we're in right now. But it goes back to the policy that Obama wanted to lead from the beginning. Remember, he wanted to change the nature of the bilateral relationship with Iran and with other enemies of the United States from the start. Then he was disillusioned and he went to the whole pressure track. But he's always been trying to get things to change on the bilateral track. That's why they went into this whole bilateral U.S.-Iranian, secret negotiation. They didn't even tell their European allies about it, not to mention Israel. So he would love, I think, President Obama to have this foreign policy success. It's hard to call it a success. And I think that there's an emerging new foreign policy strategy towards the Middle East where they're looking at Iran as the anchor of stability and as the solution to problems rather than as the problem itself. They look around at the Arab states. They say everyone's falling apart, and look who looks stable. It's Iran.
Oh my God.
Very misguided.
You're totally correct. And again, if I may add, the United States don't want to be the police officer of the world anymore, but they need a sheriff to handle or to make sure that everything goes well in the region by the time that they're gone, where they're not in the region anymore.
It will be a disaster.
And they think that the Iranians are the right nominee to be the sheriff in the region.
And
what I will tell you is like Israel saying that Hezbollah should be the sheriff.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Dr. Zadeh, thank you very much for being with us here.
Thanks a lot.
Ron Zinger, thank you very much. Dr. Landau, thank you very much. We're going out for a small break. 2 minutes, and I'll be back with the rest of the news today. Don't go anywhere. For now, we're not friends with Hezbollah. 2 minutes, and I'll be back. High-level negotiations on Iran's nuclear program are underway in Geneva. This time, the talks include top nuclear officials from both sides, and every issue is on the table. Newly minted American Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter gathers security chiefs in Kuwait for a briefing on U.S. strategy against jihadism, vowing lasting defeat against the Islamic State group. And Israel's electricity company cuts off electricity to 2 towns in the West Bank for 45 minutes. The company announces that if a resolution won't be found to a $500 million debt held by the Palestinian Authority, further measures will be enforced. Welcome back to the news today. The new U.S. Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, is in Kuwait today, where he's holding talks with top U.S. military commanders and diplomats over the ongoing battle against the Islamic State group. Carter says he hopes the discussions will help him assess the war he inherited. Military correspondent Shaiban Ari explains.
The arrival of new U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter in Kuwait may prove to be a pivotal visit. The requisite meeting with the Kuwaiti emir was held, but perhaps more importantly, the tiny Gulf country was chosen as the location for a 6-hour meeting between the new Pentagon chief and 24 U.S. officials, the first major strategy session under Carter dedicated to fighting the Islamic State terrorist organization. The objective was made very clear.
We're pressing ISIL very ably from Kuwait and elsewhere, and we will deliver lasting defeat, make no doubt.
Present were the top American military commanders involved, but also representatives from the State Department. Pentagon officials described the meeting as unorthodox, with the secretary himself eager to be rid of protocol and looking for a more honest discussion. PowerPoint presentations were banned and participants encouraged to raise problems that have arisen so far. One described it as a breath of fresh air. The meeting comes as the U.S. has recently authorized the limited use of ground forces for the sake of special missions in the aid of the overall effort. Many have called for a rethink of the U.S.'s role in the fight against IS for some time now, but the new secretary is aware of the risks involved.
I think we need to be convinced that any use of our forces is necessary, is going to be sufficient, that we've thought through not just the first step, but the second step and the third step.
One of the major challenges on the horizon is an expected offensive to retake the IS-held Iraqi city of Mosul. One Pentagon official stated last week the attack is planned for April or May, involving between 20 to 25,000 Iraqi and Kurdish troops. The Iraqis themselves are less willing to commit to a time frame.
A military official should not reveal the offensive timing, and naturally this is a military secret. I don't know where he got this information. They absolutely do not have knowledge on this issue.
Whenever the offensive against Mosul takes place, it is expected to be the most significant battle so far in this conflict, and the exact role to be played by the U.S. may reveal much about the new man in charge at the Pentagon.
And to understand a little bit more about the current situation of the coalition forces, is with me is military correspondent for the News Today, Shai Ben-Ari. Good evening.
Good evening, Lisa.
So, Shai, let's try to understand. First, we talked about Kobani. Now we're talking about Mosul, and we're seeing that the IS is facing more and more troubles and more problems in the last few days. The coalition forces are actually succeeding?
Listen, what we're building up to really might be a climactic point. It's certainly going to be a very significant point, the battle for Mosul. It's looking like it's going to be the major battle of this conflict so far. And the key word, at least in terms of the coalition, the various forces involved in this fight, I would say is coordination. We're talking about a multi-ethnic force. We're talking about Iraqi troops, basically Sunnis, Shiites, Kurdish forces all involved in this upcoming assault, which, according to certain sources, is supposed to happen in April or May. But we're talking about, there's all sorts of problems. For example, in the Sunni sector, there's a problem of recruitment. People with, like, the Sunni community in Iraq is gradually coming to terms with the true face of IS, and recruitment has been going up. It's still nowhere near where it needs to be, according to the commanders. There is a problem of coordination between the Kurds, the Shiites, and the Sunnis, who are all looking to battle for their own ground. They are thinking about the day after, of course. The Sunnis themselves are looking for more support directly from Washington. They want to sort of go around the Iraqi government, which is still dominated by the Shiites.
Okay.
The Americans have actually not been so forthcoming. They want to go through the Iraqi government, perhaps not to piss off Iran a little bit.
Yeah, I just heard how much the Iraqi government,
Yeah.
the U.S. Government is smart. I'm not going to continue. Just let's take it to another level, and we're talking about a new defense secretary that is coming with a lot of problems that came before. How is he going to start dealing with these problems?
Well, this is a guy, Ash Carter. This is not someone who is afraid of challenging previous conceptions. And, the previous conception regarding the battle against IS was based basically on airstrikes, first of all, which has been rather effective. But also, for example, on the ground, the U.S. is mainly supposed to be involved up till now in training Syrian rebels. That, in fact, has not even begun. And I think we're looking perhaps at a major shift in terms of thinking of how the U.S. has to deal with this, not so much focusing on the training of rebels, perhaps now a real implementation of what we saw a few weeks ago with the authorization to expand the military effort. We're talking about special ops, apparently, to be in action, quite possibly in the context of this assault on Mosul. We'll see. What they usually mention in this respect is all sorts of missions to locate, to pinpoint kinetic strikes, to have special forces on the ground, to bring in airstrikes to more specific locations. This is the kind of thing that has been discussed so far. But Ash Carter himself has been critical of Obama and the Obama policy on a number of different issues: Ukraine, the Iraq surge, the Afghanistan timetable. We could very well be seeing a lot of clashes and perhaps a new approach in terms of how the Pentagon approaches
unbelievable. This is just, and we're talking only military solutions. We didn't even start about talking about more of a strategy, actual strategy, how to fight this terrible terror group. Thank you very much, Shai Ben-Ari. And at 2 p.m. today, the Israel Electric Corporation cut off power supplies to the Palestinian cities of Jenin and Nablus for about 45 minutes as a warning regarding the Palestinian debt to the company. All in all, the Palestinian Authority electricity firm with jurisdictions over East Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Ramallah, Jericho, and other cities owes the Israeli electricity company a debt of more than $500 million. And the company is threatening further measures. And to, of course, understand how the people cope today with 45 minutes less of electricity in the West Bank. With us in Nablus is I-24 News, the News Today diplomatic correspondent Eli Ochenberg. Good evening. This is something that we talked about yesterday, and we warned about that Israel might find itself in a big clash in the West Bank, not in the Gaza Strip, because Israel's not transferring the tax money to them.
Absolutely, Lucy. Now, before we dive into the latest details about the Israeli Electric Corporation cutting off electricity today, I want to show you the beautiful lights of the Arab city of Nablus right behind me in the West Bank. Now, this is the second largest city in the West Bank. It has over 340,000 residents, among them 3 refugee camps. It has a huge hospital in it. It's a city of trade and industry. And one of the most interesting things about it that you know, we talk a lot about Hamas and extremist fractions within Hamas, but here in Nablus, the extreme fractions are from Fatah, and they really control the area here. And this city, only a few hours ago, were completely cut off electricity for a short period of time, 45 minutes. But again, a city which relies so highly on industry and trade, and again, the hospital and university, etc., it's really a significant step. Now, the Palestinian Authority, as you said, has a debt of almost 2 billion shekels, which are nearly $500 million to the Israeli Electric Corporation. And despite ongoing alerts and warnings from the IEC, the Palestinian Authority showed no intention to pay its debt. So today we see a punitive measure and a measure of alert to the Palestinian Authority to pay its debt. And the Israeli Electric Corporation already announced that it will try to do so in the future as well if they will see no movement from the side of the Palestinian Authority. Now, one last point: the IEC requested in the past to use these actions, but the Prime Minister's office and other security fractions prevented them to do so. So what we've seen today received the approval of the Prime Minister's office, and this is maybe the most interesting point, and we will of course elaborate on that. But as for now, the city of Nablus is all right with electricity, but we can definitely expect more developments on this track ahead.
Yes, Eli Ochenberg, thank you very much for this. Let's hope that we won't send you in the near future to Nablus for something else or for deterioration in the security situation. Let's hope. Around the world, countries are looking at new measures to stop homegrown terror. Australia's Prime Minister announced today a crackdown that could strip the passports of dual citizens and curb travel overseas. Meanwhile, France has begun implementing travel bans. Correspondent Lea Bordugo and Ayman Siksik explain.
French authorities are beginning to act against homegrown jihadism. 6 French citizens aged 23 to 28 have had their passports revoked on plans to travel to Syria. They are now barred from leaving French territory for 6 months, a period of time that could be renewed. The measure is being applied for the first time and is part of the anti-terror arsenal decided upon last November in the National Assembly. For French Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve, this new approach is essential.
If French citizens leave to commit crimes in Iraq and Syria, upon their return, they represent an even greater danger to the country and are likely to commit terror acts of greater magnitude.
Suspected by intelligence to be candidates for jihad, these French citizens were given a receipt showing their citizenship in exchange for their passports. Some of them were reported by their relatives, others detected during investigations by the internal security services. Cazeneuve announced that 40 additional citizens are set to be banned from travel and suggested such moves will be stepped up in the coming weeks. Questioned on these first travel bans, French Prime Minister Manuel Valls, while at an agriculture summit, said only there will be others. According to officials, nearly 1,000 French citizens are involved in jihadism, with 376 currently known to be in Syria.
In the U.S., landmark verdict has been announced. A jury has ordered the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Palestinian Authority to pay over $218 million to 10 American families for providing material support to terrorists. The Americans sued over 6 attacks between the years 2002 and 2004 that killed 33 people and injured over 450. Both Palestinian branches are expected to appeal the decision. That's more money that the Palestinian Authority is going to owe to someone. And we're moving to Ukraine. The Ukrainian military announced today it will not continue to pull out troops from the east of the country as fighting with pro-Russian rebels continues. The future prospects of the deal after yesterday's bombing attack in eastern Ukraine seem more grim than ever. Ayman Siksik has more.
Pro-Russian forces stationed near Ukraine's port city of Mariupol continued to attack government troops' positions on Monday, fueling concerns for the fate of an internationally brokered ceasefire. Ukraine's military said 2 soldiers were killed in the fighting in the last 24 hours.
Ukrainian forces were shelled 27 times in the past day. Fighting has diminished in eastern Ukraine since rebels violated the ceasefire to capture the town of Debaltseve, but it's still not quite enough to allow us to withdraw artillery from the front.
Also on Monday, Ukraine's security forces apprehended suspects in the bombing attack in Kharkiv, which killed 2 people and wounded at least 15 others on Sunday. President Petro Poroshenko said the timing of the Kharkiv attack was not coincidental.
Our opponents, our enemies, have tried to destabilize the situation in the country. As you know, there was an act of terrorism in Kharkiv, and our special security services were able to prevent an act of terrorism in Odessa.
Following the bombing, residents of Kharkiv rushed to aid the wounded in the pro-Ukrainian rally. Kharkiv is the biggest city in the embattled east of Ukraine. But at 140 miles away from the war zone, it had suffered relatively little violence until Sunday. Meanwhile, in the north of the country, residents of the city of Sumy burned an effigy of Russian President Vladimir Putin during pre-Lenten celebrations. The move was a symbolic act of protest against Russia's annexation of Crimea in March 2014.
Yes, and now to economy. And with me from the value creation expert, the Academic College of Tel Aviv, is Dr. Alex Coman. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. So, Greece again. I don't know if I had enough of hearing about Greece and Greece's economy, but let's talk about Greece's economy.
Let's
what are the demands that Greece is putting on the table?
Well, Greece must come up by the weekend with a plan that the Germans would consider plausible and coherent. Now, this is something that the Greeks really hate, because it's as if it's like being a small child when somebody tells you, come up with a plan. And their plan is basically that to bring 2.5 billion euros from rich people evading taxes, so they have a huge black economy, and 2.3 billion euros from tobacco and petrol, people smuggling petrol into Greece and tobacco into Greece and not paying taxes for that. So they should show how they bring this money. And now the interesting thing is that Krugman, the famous economist, he talked about the fact that Greek economy today is like the U.S. during the Great Depression, like Germany after World War I, because they lost 25% of their standard of living. So the question is, how can you impose such measures on a country? But if you compare this to the fact that they have such a big black economy, then it's difficult to know what really goes on.
From where they're going to start paying the debt money that the money that they owe to Germany?
I don't think that they can pay the debt. I think that in the best case they can pay the interest, but that's really a very optimistic assumption. The point is that apparently there is money, but the money is under the table.
But when we're talking about the money is under the table, what are you telling me? Basically, you're telling me that we might find Greece in another election campaign very soon because this government won't be able to control?
Yes, apparently their finance minister is very sexy and very optimistic, but unless he can print lots of money, I think he is probably in deep trouble. So what you're telling me is that we're going to talk a lot more about Greece's economy. Yes. Perfect. Exchange recipes of Greek food.
Yes, Greek food. Exactly. Good food they have in Greece.
Excellent.
Alex Coleman, thank you very much for this. Two former British foreign ministers and current MPs have been suspended from parliament duties after they were filmed offering to use their political status and power to aid a commercial company. I-24 News reporter Shai Ben-Ari has the details.
I have to earn my income.
It's the kind of footage politicians' nightmares are made of.
I'm well aware of the fact I've been my name, all right? Yeah. So, okay. I get that, but it's what it is you want from me, what I can offer you and could do for you.
Two former British foreign ministers, Jack Straw of Labour and Sir Malcolm Rifkind of the Conservatives, were caught on camera by undercover reporters from the Daily Telegraph and Channel 4's Dispatches program, offering their services as MPs to act on behalf of a fictitious Chinese company in exchange for payment.
Normally, if I'm doing a speech or something, it's £5,000 a day. That's what I charge. Yeah.
Rifkind boasted to the reporters about the, quote, useful access he has to any ambassador, while also stressing his availability.
You would be surprised how much free time I have. I spend a lot of time reading, I spend a lot of time walking, because I'm not a minister or full-time working for one person. I can sort out my day.
Straw bragged about how he worked under the radar to change EU rules for the benefit of another company for £60,000 a year. While it is not strictly illegal in the UK for members of parliament to accept extra income, paying MPs to lobby is. Following the revelations, Straw suspended himself from the Labour Party, while Rifkind has also been suspended from exercising his parliamentary privileges.
MPs being paid to lobby, that is not acceptable, is not allowed under the rules. I think it's right that both Jack Straw and Malcolm Rifkind have referred themselves to the Parliamentary Commissioner to have themselves investigated.
The Prime Minister, however, ruled out a motion to ban all economic ties between MPs and outside parties, saying these often benefit the work of members of Parliament.
MPs are being paid to lobby. They should pay a visit in Israel. The pirates are coming to Israeli politics, surprise, surprise, and they are taking no prisoners. Here's I-24 News reporter Ori Shapira on the small but promising party that's pushing for direct democracy and a connection with a worldwide movement gaining pace in recent years.
It has no money, no big names or political celebrities in its ranks, and doesn't even have any ambition to win seats in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. Nonetheless, it's getting its fair share of attention in the 2015 election campaign. Welcome to the Pirate Party. Surprisingly, the head of the party, Ohad Shem Tov, doesn't even live in Israel and has no intention of coming, not even during the campaign.
We feel that we have influence, even though we don't really make it into the Knesset. And And truly, we don't know if we really want to make it to the Knesset because we feel that everything is really corrupted there, and we don't know how we would handle that kind of environment.
The Pirate Party is a worldwide movement comprising 29 different parties throughout the globe, but mostly in Europe. The German and Swedish branches won 1 and 2 seats in the European Parliament, and in Iceland, the local Pirate Party managed to win 3 parliamentary mandates, heading their agenda, promoting open data in the web and defending the free flow of ideas in the internet. But perhaps the most ambitious idea the Pirate Parties are trying to promote is direct democracy.
We are creating a system where people can also participate directly on our platform with liquid feedback. But we want to expand it and are encouraging other parties to do it. We're doing it open source.
If we would be elected, our representatives in the parliament, in the Israeli Knesset, would act according to the decisions that were made by the entire body of members.
This may sound like a crazy idea or a radical one, but perhaps for those who gave up on the traditional system, the Pirate Party suggests a new wave in the Israeli and the international political arenas. But as the big ships of Israeli politics sail steadily towards their victory, the Israeli Pirate Party does not look likely even to find safe haven.
Who is Captain Hook in Israeli politics? And now to culture. With me, just here, it's Jaffa Port, who spent the night really awake.
Really happy.
Yes, let's, before you will start summing up this Academy Award, the American Academy gave its Oscar for Best Picture to Birdman in a pretty predictable night, she said it, which also included some stirring political speeches from women's rights through racial diversity to immigration regulation. I-24 News, this is her. Culture correspondent Jaffa Port recaps Hollywood's big night.
Check out everything.
It was an exciting night at the 87th Academy Awards, and it was also an unsurprising one. Mexican director Alejandro González Iñárritu and his feature Birdman flew high and swiped 4 prestigious prizes: Best Picture, Director, Cinematography and Original Screenplay. The 5th non-American director to win in a row, Iñárritu referred to the immigration status in the U.S.
Maybe next year the government will inflict some immigration rules to the Academy. 2 Mexicans in a row, that's suspicious, I guess.
The biggest loser of the night, Boyhood, scrapped only 1 prize for its Best Supporting Actress, Patricia Arquette, who chose to send a powerful political message.
It's our time to have wage equality once and for all, and equal rights for women in the United States of America.
And expected supporting actor winner J.K. Simmons conveyed a message to parents and their children.
Call them. Don't text, don't email. Call them on the phone. Tell them you love them and thank them and listen to them for as long as they want to talk to you.
Both winners of this year's Best Leading Roles went to those portraying people with incurable diseases. British actor Eddie Redmayne, who played physicist Stephen Hawking, stood excited on stage and dedicated his prize to those suffering from ALS, as did actress Julianne Moore, who portrayed a linguistics professor coping with Alzheimer's.
Moving pictures.
First-time host Neil Patrick Harris brought to the spotlight his Broadway and Tony hosting expertise in a dazzling opening number, and couldn't resist a dig at the controversial all-white nomination this year.
Tonight we honor Hollywood's best and brightest.
All in all, it was another night of glam and glimmer, but also a night marking a shift in the taste of the Academy, and perhaps even a true act of defiance against the tsunami of heavy special effects and superhero movies that have swept the industry.
Yes. Yeah, I have to say it.
Yes,
really, they're coming to educate us.
Well, I think they're taking advantage of the stage that millions and millions of people all over the world are watching them. And yes, they'd like to convey their messages, which are not that bad, you know, from women's rights to education to immigration. These are issues that they are putting on the table, and they're not politicians, they are actors and performers and directors.
Which is really important, but why didn't you think about it before?
Well, this is the stage they chose to seize, and I'm all in favor of that. And it was an exciting night, a very expected one, as we mentioned, but it had its best moment, especially when it was a night of underwear. First of all, Neil Patrick Harris came on stage wearing this. It was a reference, of course, to a Birdman scene. He started off walking behind the scenes. He then yelled at Miles Teller from Whiplash to drum in his beat, yelling at him, "It's not my tempo," from Whiplash. And then he stood on stage. Here we can see him behind the scenes. So that was underwear number one. Okay. Underwear number two was when winning Mexican director Alejandro González Iñárritu admitted on stage that he's in fact wearing the tighty whities from Birdman, the original ones Michael Keaton wore. It's his lucky charm, and it did work for him that night.
Wear it at the same night, right?
At least that. Other epic moments of the night was when, for example, Lady Gaga sang the Sound of Music, a wonderful combination of several songs of the Sound of Music. It was actually a lovely performance and very interesting to see her, and very normal to see her. She had a lovely hug with Julie Andrews after this singing, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Sound of Music, March 2nd. And another peak of the evening was when Paweł Polikowski, I hope I said his name right, won Best Foreign Picture for Poland. You know, I kept learning Andrzej Zbigniew's name for the Russian Leviathan, but he didn't win. Eventually went for Ida. And what I loved about his speech is that he just went on going. There was the cue, the musical cue, tell him to get off the stage. That did not work. He just, for 3.5 minutes, no politically correct.
If you win an Oscar, you won't just keep on going, talking.
He did not stop, to the much applause and amusement of the audience. It was a great evening, thanks to him.
Ciao, Bella. I think you need to go to sleep, right?
I need another year now.
Thank you very much for this. 2 minutes and we will be back.